is 7 o'clock. Welcome to the Town of Littleton Board of Health meeting for December 15th, 2021. First item on our agenda is to welcome our new member, Matt Wason. Matt, welcome. I don't know if you have any words you'd like to share with us, comments?
Thank you and good evening. I'm a relatively new Littleton resident, having lived here just a little over 3 years, but I'm really excited for this opportunity and want to put some energy into helping out any way I can, the Board of Health and our town and community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for stepping up.
I think we ought to introduce him to Jim.
Yes, sir. Matt Wason, meet Mr. Jim Gariffi, who's our health agent and our sanitarian, and he's the head of Neshoba Associated Boards of Health. You're muted, Jim.
Matt, nice to meet you. And I haven't gotten you the information I said I would get you, but I'll get that to you this week, hopefully.
That's fine. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
All right. So moving on, now that we have a full board, we need to proceed with the reorganization of the board, selecting a chair, vice chair, and secretary.
Excuse me, it's called clerk.
Clerk, sorry. Chair, vice chair, and clerk.
Let's be clear.
Kevin, do you want to hold off? I don't know if Dan's expecting to come. I haven't heard that he's not. It's up to the board whether you want to.
I guess we should have a full board to reorganize in attendance, shouldn't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Up to you. It's up to you.
Okay. Yeah, we can hold off on that. And if Dan is able to join us, then we can revisit.
Janet, can you give him a ping?
Trying now.
Okay.
And our first public hearing is not until 7:05. On the topic of deed restriction, I do have a member comment, and I'm wondering if the board is open to adding a discussion to our next meeting in order to expedite some of the deed restriction requests we get, so that if homeowners requesting an addition that will bring their total room count to 2 over the rating of their current septic system, that we will allow that subject to a deed restriction. Currently, we allow 1 over the count, and I'd be proposing, we would be discussing allowing 2 rooms over the count with a deed restriction. Given the current scenario with COVID and people needing more space for home offices and playrooms and things like that, I think we're going to get a lot of these requests. No, Dan
Here
just
comes Dan. Yep.
So with him on board, can we proceed to reorg?
I'd say so.
Dan, can you hear us?
I can. Sorry about that. I was in a Zoom issue. Sorry.
No problem. Dan, meet Matthew Wason, the newest member of the Littleton Board of Health. Matt Wason, meet Dan. Dan, we were just discussing the reorganization of the board. Now that we have a 5-member board again. So we will need to select a chair, a vice chair, and a clerk.
I'll make a motion to get things going quickly. I'll nominate Kevin Baker for the position of chair of the Littleton Board of Health.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll take a roll call vote. Gino Fratelloni.
Yes.
Dan Kane.
Dan Kane, yes.
Matthew Wason.
Matt Wason, yes.
Mike Zeldin.
Mike Zeldin, yes.
And Kevin Baker votes yes. Now we need to select a vice chair. I'll make a motion to pick Mr. Zeldin as the vice chair of the Board of Health.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. I will take a roll call vote. Gino Fratelloni.
Yes, yes. Gino Farrar, yes.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
Matthew Waston,
Matt Wason, yes.
and Mike Zeldin.
Mike Zeldin, yes.
And Kevin Baker votes yes. Now we've selected clerk.
Make a motion to Dan Kane for clerk of the Littleton Board of Health.
Second it.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Gino Fratelloni,
Gino Farrar, yes.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
Matt Waston,
Matt Wason, yes.
Mike Zeldin,
Mike Zeldin, yes.
and Kevin Baker votes yes. Okay, done with the reorganization. We have a 7:05 public hearing for 16 Trot Road. Is anyone here for that? It's the Eric Anderson is the trustee for the nominee trust. And it's a request to approve a deed restriction increasing room count to 10 for a 4-bedroom septic.
Please raise your hand so that I can give you permission to talk.
Is it someone with Rebel Builders, Janet?
Yeah, I'm not seeing my contact though. Chris Anderson. Is anybody here for the 16 Trot Road? Please raise your hand on your Zoom page.
Well, I guess while we're waiting, Jim, do you have any comments on this? I know that's typically something sometimes we like to, stick with our precedent and, always make the same action on things like these.
Sure. So I think the comment I would make, I was looking at the plans before the meeting, and I may have sent him to the board in error because as I looked at the plans, it is just what they have is they're adding 2 rooms off the back of the house. And I checked, I for some reason thought the basement was finished, but it doesn't appear to be according to the assessor's office. So I'll check with him to make sure. But there appears to be 8 rooms in the house and they're adding the 2. And if that were the case, it would meet your deed restriction policy because it would be 1 over. So I may have sent him to the board in error.
Okay.
Too many of these basement refinishes, I can't kind of keep them all straight. So, so I guess that would be the comment. Again, I always look at the assessors to see what they're saying. I haven't had a chance to do that before I got on, but I will. But that what they have is the 2 rooms. One is a family room, one is a sunroom, and the sunroom they want to heat also, so it'd be heated space. Would be kind of considered a room. I approved the building permit without them having heat in it at this point, so the board is going to act on it. But again, as I looked over all the paperwork again tonight, it may have been in my error.
So typically the board will allow 10 rooms on a 4-bedroom septic with a deed restriction.
Correct. That'd be 1 room over what Title V mentioned.
Okay. So if they're not in attendance, I see, Jim, if you think they don't need to come in front of us, then we can close this.
Sure, I was gonna say, as long as the basement, I'll verify that isn't finished. I think based on the floor plans that they provided, I think there was 4 and 4 rooms downstairs, 4 rooms upstairs, and the 2 rooms would add 10.
Okay.
Or would be 10 total, I'm sorry.
10 total. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll close that public hearing, and if they have to come back, they'll have to come back at a later date. We have a 7:10 joint meeting with the Conservation Commission, and I know that they have already granted approval for 5 Cottage Way, but the engineers wanted to come back and potentially talk to us about an adjustment on the plan. Jim, what do you know about this?
Amy sent me an email, Amy Green with Conservation sent me an email. I haven't looked at the particulars on it. Jen and I talked briefly. It sounded like maybe they're putting a bearer in there, but I haven't seen what it is that they had changed yet. So are they here tonight to talk about that?
Janet, I'm not sure who it was that was coming, so.
Yeah, I'm looking. Amy was expecting them to get back to us about the barrier. I have not received any information today regarding it. And I'm not seeing anybody.
I'm just looking up Amy's email so I can see what the gist of it is. Voted.
Yeah. I see a Butters, but I don't see. Raise your hand if you are the engineer on this project. I'm not seeing them.
So my email from Amy mentioned the barrier, so it's not, so I don't know if you remember this at all from the last meeting. Well, I don't know if we looked at the plans the last meeting, but the meetings in which the board approved the retaining wall. So your regulations require approval at a meeting for retaining walls and for poly barriers. So one of the things the applicant proposed in putting the system across the, across the stream essentially, and to try to work with conservation as far as grading was to put a retaining wall in. So instead of having to go out 15 feet and 3-to-1 as a typical Title V breakout would be, they would go out 15 feet, put a barrier in, then they wouldn't have to do the grading into the buffer zone. The system itself would be at 50 feet, which meets Title V. The barrier, the wall would meet Title V and not require them to do the grading. It sounds like, and again, I haven't seen the proposal from the engineer yet, that they wanted to put a barrier inside the retaining wall. So between the leaching area and the retaining wall, they would put a barrier in there. I don't see it as an issue, but according to your regulations, your barriers walls need to be approved by the board. Whether you would consider, since you approve the wall, the barriers inside, and it's not something outside of it. It's not required by Title V. Whether you would consider that acceptable in in kind of confines of the approval that you gave for the wall. Again, I don't see it as a big issue, but because it's yours to approve. But whether you felt you needed to do a formal approval of it because it's a plan change.
Does anyone have any comments?
As long as the retaining wall remains as part of the granted variance, as Jim just pointed out, I have no difficulty in basically memorializing it with a vote, making it very clear that the the retaining wall is the rate limiting, or the, shall we say, the major item here on the list. They're just putting another layer, as it were.
Yeah, extra protection. It sounds like.
Yeah, you won't be able to take a vote because it was a discussion tonight instead of a public hearing. So if it falls within Jim's authority, normally, then it can be handled that way. Otherwise, we can put it on as a public hearing for next meeting.
I mean, it seems like they're going above and beyond what they're required to do. I think that would be fine, Jim, if you're comfortable with just giving them the approval once you see the plan.
Yep.
Sure. And again, I get what I would say is, if, let's say they went out 10 feet, put a barrier and did 3-to-1, and then came back to you and asked to put a retaining wall in and go to 15 feet, I'd say that's a significant change. But what they're doing is they're leaving the retaining wall, which is close to the wetland, just adding the barrier on the inside. They're adding, to the point that was mentioned, they're just making it more protective, if you will. Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess that ends that discussion. Next is a 7:20, so we have some time. Do we want to take care of minutes while we're waiting? Okay, so we have the minutes from November 10th, December 1st, and December 6th. Did everyone have a chance to go over those? Yeah, okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of November 10, December 1, and December 6 as presented.
I second it.
roll call vote. Gino Fratelloni,
Gino Ferraro, yes.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
Matt Wason. We probably
Now we abstain.
Mike Zeldin
Mike Sullivan, yes.
and Kevin Baker, yes. Let's see, what else do we have? We have about 4 minutes. Janet, do you know who's coming for the Nines Rover public hearing?
It's supposed to be Matt Field. Oh, I see an owner here with their hand up.
If they could tee up the plans and have them ready for us to. Great.
Matthew Field.
Hi,
I'm here.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
Great, you?
Doing well. Are you able to share plans?
Yeah, I did. I sent them to Janet. I sent the original floor plans of the house, the 4-bedroom home, where they finished, when we built it 7 years ago. It's a 4-bedroom house, 4-bedroom septic, with a finished basement. And all the owner is looking to do is have us remodel the basement to put a gym in. They have a media room down there. So they want to put a gym with a rubber floor in it. They have an office down there they use. And we're going to put a wet bar and a bathroom. But
Do you have the plan? Do you have the plan to post up?
I'm sorry?
You have the plan to show?
No, he's sent them to.
I sent them to Janet. I'll try.
Janet, do you have them fresh on your screen, Janet? Or could you email them to me really quickly that I could share? All I have handy is the basement plan.
That's all I got.
All right. So I will forward these to you. I'll try and do it right now. I got the owner with me here too.
Okay.
Who's a lot better at. All right, I'm gonna forward this, Janet, to you right now.
I have them. I'm sending them to Kevin again.
Oh, you have them? Okay, great.
Yeah, she has it. Yeah.
There was a permit on there as well. You turn that camera on, Sassy. Go to the owner.
Yeah.
There we are. I'm in the back. So as you see the living room on that, are you looking at the basement plans there?
Yes.
All right, so you see the living room, the gym, and the theater room. That is all completely finished now. Carpeted, done, walkout basement. And what we're gonna do is add a wet bar, a bathroom, and put up 2 walls for the gym with a rubber floor.
The plan has disappeared.
I don't know what happened. I'll do it.
So has Kevin.
Whoever is sharing, stop the screen sharing.
Sorry about that. Can you see my screen or not?
Coming up.
There you
Yeah,
go.
Kevin is sharing. Yeah.
So this is the 7:20 public hearing for 9 Drover Lane. This is the proposed, this is the proposed renovation?
Yes, sir.
It's not proposed, he says it's done.
It's completely finished now. The living room, gymnasium, and theater room. They have a media room that goes front to back where the gym is.
We are adding a wall there. Yeah.
I see.
You're adding the wall between the
Gym and theater, right?
and adding a bathroom.
In the storage room section.
And adding a bathroom.
Yeah, that's the bathroom. Yeah.
So you have a front to back right here. So this is what you're adding.
Yes, those two walls right there.
Yeah.
Jim, have you reviewed the current layout as well as this layout?
Yes, so in preparation of the meeting, I pulled the plans out to take a look at the building permit. Matt had sent a copy of the building permit application, Matt Field, to Janet, or the owner did through Matt. The 2 floors above have 8 rooms total, so 4 bedrooms and then 4 rooms downstairs. When the house was being built, they amended the building permit to finish the basement, and a note was put on the building permit at that time that there was to be no more than 1 room, so that the house remained 9 rooms, 4 bedrooms. So that's kind of where we left it back in 2013.
So this would give them a total of this 11 rooms?
That's how I would, as I'm taking a look at, that's how I would, and that's why I sent it here, is that it would exceed.
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty standard policy. I don't know if any board members want to make a comment.
How about if we put a deed restriction? There is no closet in, it's truly being used as a gymnasium. We have rubber floor going in there. We encourage you to come out and visit. If we had to, we'd put a deed restriction on it.
Well, there should already be a deed restriction.
Well, there isn't.
So again, when the permit was signed off in 2013, it was 9 rooms, 4 bedrooms.
Right,
So the addition of 1 more room would cause a deed restriction now to be needed. So by closing in these rooms now, you're starting to close in. You add more rooms, if you will, to the plan.
Right.
They're adding a gym, but that effect, they're actually creating 2 new rooms, because the basement was theoretically for 1 room.
Right.
It's now going to be 3 because breaking it up this way.
That's how I viewed it.
I would say the same thing. That basement was never really 2 rooms. It was always just 1. Now it's 3. Or that's the plan.
Well, if we go upstairs, if you look at the front to back living room, that's what that's being used as now, as 1 room. I mean, it's front to back, right over the theater room and the gymnasium. That is 1 room upstairs, front to back. But the plan does show a separation as depicted.
What are those? What are those, Jim? What are they labeled as? Like living room, dining room?
That's right. It's the same kind of discussion about open concept and counting room uses, and that's how the plans are set up.
And if this gym were less than 70 square feet, you wouldn't call it another room, right?
Would not. No, that wouldn't meet yeah.
Matt, can you make the room less than 70 square feet?
It'd be really hard to have a treadmill and the weight bench that he has and the elliptical. It just.
Yeah, it's too. Yeah.
And is that a newly installed bathroom near the storage, locked onto the storage room?
Yes, sir. That is the proposed half bath. Yep.
So we can sort of see that this is, functionally, we can room count, but this is also another indication of what we'll call multi-use, which is fine, except that we do have shall we say, a policy, I think, well-founded to keep it to 1 room.
So with the gymnasium, it puts us 1 room over, Jim?
I guess, Kevin, if it's all right, I guess the way I'm looking at this is, if you the one space, if you add the 1 space, made, I don't know, say open the wall up to the gym and made it a living room with the gym equipment at one end and had a theater, then it's the 2 room on top of the 8, and then you're at, 1 room over. Again, I don't doubt how people are going to use their houses, but the septic system goes with the house no matter who the owner is. And so we just want to make sure that there's no question as to what the use of the house is to be.
So I think we're saying if it were 2 rooms in the basement, it would be okay. We'd have no problem with that.
I think Jim is suggesting to achieve that by having no wall barrier, no wall between what is labeled as the gym function or gym and the living room in the basement.
I see. Yep.
How about if we had no door?
No, you take the
Well,
walls got to go.
they make 1 room.
Yeah,
Even with a deed restriction, sir?
the walls got to go. It's the next owner that that's what the deed restriction is meant. So there's no way of this being presented as more than 3 rooms down here. Jim, is that a fair representation of what the point is?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's to try to keep the house within the bedroom count and the room count. And the boards are allowed to accept deed restrictions on properties. But again, it's up to the board to decide, what you think is reasonable. But that's our concern, to make sure that there's, it's on the deed so that there's no misrepresentation. Or, I mean, we see real estate listings all the time that we, send a note on to somebody saying, yeah, that's not the number of bedrooms in the unit, or some of them kind of list rooms and then say potential. And I guess we just want to make sure that there's no misinformation, no misunderstanding about what can be used.
Does anyone have a motion?
Mike, and I may be seeing this wrong, but under the current conditions today, I mean, people are having a hard time even going to a gym and having a separate space to work out. It just, it seems like you're penalizing somebody, even when they're proposing a deed restriction, and to not have it be used as a bedroom, or, I mean, we have no closets. It's not designed as a bedroom, and it doesn't have floor as a bedroom.
It's not directed at the current owner. We can't do anything about the site. We can't do anything about the volume capacity of the septic system. There's an additional bathroom here. Fine. All I can tell you is that this house, this great house, has been, shall we say, designed in such a way as that the best we can do is, 3 rooms in the basement.
And what would be the 3 rooms?
2 rooms in the basement.
I'm sorry, 2 rooms. It would be the living room, which could conceivably confine 2 of them together. I can understand not doing that to the theater room. So it would be the theater room and the living room.
Or somehow put up some temporary separation between your gym and theater room.
The gym in the living room, he means, I think. He would be after.
Either way, doesn't matter.
Yeah, either way, I don't care how he does it.
Or make something less than 70 square feet. But I mean, I think even if we're talking about adding 2 rooms in the basement, you're still looking at a deed restriction based on our current policy.
Yeah, I cannot get in. Yeah.
Okay. I will talk to the client, and I appreciate your time, and we'll have to reconsider.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good evening, guys.
You too.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
So it's 7:30. We have our COVID-19 update. I made a mistake on the agenda. Katrina is not with us, but thankfully, Mr. Gariffi is.
Kevin, before you go forward, since that was a public hearing.
Yep.
do you want to, you didn't make a motion, or is that what you intend to leave that open-ended?
We could, would you like us to continue it? Or we can just wait for Matt to keep it open and wait for Matt to come back?
Leave it open.
Okay.
They'll waste a lot of time. Leave it open.
Jim, how are we doing?
Okay.
Jim, do you want to give us a brief COVID-19 update?
Yep, I'm sorry to, I am nowhere near as good a presenter and have the wealth of information and information that Katrina has. But what I will tell you is I provided Mike with an update of numbers, kind of a peek at what tomorrow will look like.
Would you like me to show Katrina's slides? Because I can pull those up if you wanted to talk through them.
Yeah, they're really useful. Yeah.
I mean, you can, but I'm not sure I'm qualified to talk through all her slides, but
Okay.
if you want to. So I was going to, go ahead.
If it's any consolation, a lot of them, except for certain key numbers, are exactly the same as they were the previous time.
Okay.
We're trending the same, more or less, same direction.
And I was mentioning the numbers, taking a look at them this morning. Yeah, I mean,
You don't have to speak to the slides, but I'll just put them up as we go.
sure. So the number of cases in town for the current 2-week rolling period. So this period of time will cover November 28th through December 12th. So it's covering the post-Thanksgiving timeframe. It looks like we'll go from 44 in Littleton to possibly 67 plus or minus. So again, an increase. We're seeing that same, kind of an increase and that same magnitude of increase in many of the towns in the district. And I think, part of the explanation would be is that we're capturing everything that probably happened, including travel after Thanksgiving, where people were pretty close and probably lots of people together. So is that the only thing contributing to it? No, but I think it's probably the driver. As you look through the cases quickly again, family transmission, multiple cases at the same address seem to be the big driver of those numbers. Mike asked me after COVID meeting on Monday about test kits. I'm sure everyone saw or heard the governor's press conference where he announced distribution of test kits to 102 communities in the Commonwealth. Most of those were communities that were at or just below the poverty level. So as I look through the list, none of the district communities were on there. But in that message from the governor, they talked about trying to put together a contract with the test manufacturers so that communities could purchase kits at a state rate, if you will. In talking with, I sent an email to Sam Wong, who's our contact at the Office of Local and Regional Public Health. And on a call today for the Public Health Excellence Grant, they mentioned that the state hopes to have some information about a contract for buying kits at state rates sometime in January. So I'll certainly keep you posted on that. Certainly the town can purchase those kits with your ARPA money, if that's the case. Distribution on the call today with the different public health entities. There were some creative ways to try to get the kits out, whether it's through food pantries or through churches, Meals on Wheels folks, just to try to make sure you're reaching disadvantaged folks. So, if you're thinking of doing the kits, probably want to start thinking about how you might want to do the distribution of kits. I think the ones the state is distributing, there are 2 tests in a box. And so they are providing the kits to the communities. It's up to the communities to come up with a distribution plan. I don't believe the state, other than try to be fair and equitable with the distribution of the kits and try to get the population that they feel needed it the most, was the directive. So I'll get you some more information about that potential ability to purchase as soon as I know more about it. And then I guess the last thing I would mention is we will have a COVID booster clinic on the 22nd in Littleton at the town hall, town offices. It'll be downstairs. I provided Anthony with a link so that people could register for the clinic. We'll bring doses, and registrations are really important to make sure that we have enough vaccine for the folks who are coming. So that clinic is scheduled from 3 to 6 p.m. And we'll be offering the Moderna vaccine. So that's the one that we have the refrigeration and capability to hold.
That's December 22nd?
Correct.
Yep.
3 to 6 p.m.
Great. And have you been in touch with Liz at the EHS?
I sent the link to Anthony. I assume
Okay.
he was going to distribute it, but if not, I'll certainly check with him tomorrow to make sure it gets, if it didn't, that it gets distributed to all those folks.
Yeah, Council on Aging. I think that'd be a great population to get over there too.
Yep. No, absolutely.
The clinics that you just mentioned and include opportunity or limited opportunity, I guess, depending on the dose you have available for booster as well.
So it is a booster clinic. We're offering
Okay.
Moderna as a booster for those who are eligible. So that's essentially people over 18 who meet the state's eligibility.
Okay.
And the link I sent to Anthony has a link to the state's eligibility page, just so people can click on it and make sure that they're eligible for a booster.
Right. Yeah, and also sometimes it gets a little confusing for folks, but they can use the Moderna if they've already got their shots from the first 2 shots from Pfizer. Is that correct?
Correct. And we've been doing a couple of booster clinics the past couple of weeks, and people are either, geez, I got these 2 and I want the third to be the same, or they don't care, just give me a booster. So we're running into the kind of the gambit of things, but it is important. The reason I keep mentioning Moderna is because we've had a couple of people sign up and say, oh, you're not giving me Pfizer? It's like, no, the link said Moderna. That's what we have here. So.
Yeah, the thing is, we know it doesn't really matter. It matters more that you get the booster.
Right. Yeah.
That's really, I mean, without that booster, you're really, one is really open, especially the senior contingent is especially vulnerable. Without that, I mean, anyone who's not vaccinated, anyone who does not get that booster is even with Delta, much less the new Omni on the horizon for us.
And that's why we wanted to try to, some of our clinics that we had set up for kids, other clinics had been in town, so there weren't as many kids. So we tried to backfill some of those clinics with boosters just because we know people were looking for the boosters. And so, again, we see both we want the same as the booster to be the same, and we don't care, just give us a shot. So.
Does anyone else have questions for Jim?
Excuse me, Kevin, could you show on Katrina's supplied size? I think she's got some local graphs. I don't know if it's number, I can't read it because it's.
Yeah, so here we have
not those, not the bar graph, which is graphic enough. I'm talking about the curves.
Okay.
And also the schools.
Yep.
When you get a chance, yeah. I mean, yeah, this is the one.
So you can see how Littleton stacks up against the surrounding border towns.
Going high instead of going lower.
Route 495 belt, Middlesex, and the state. It's very volatile. It's up and down, but still sort of right in the test positivity, right along the state line.
I mean, these are very drastic rises, regardless of the shape of the curve.
Yeah.
These are very rapid rises, which I think reflect very accurately an increased pace of transmission. And I'll sort of join in with Jim and suspect this is all due to lots of groups getting together and not taking mitigation measures seriously. Jim, do you have any feel for how many of these are breakthroughs?
I haven't checked recently, but the last time you asked me to take a look at the vaccination status of the positive cases and subsequent times for other towns, most of the people that we're seeing come through seem to be people who are vaccinated or fully vaccinated.
So it's crystal clear here that we're getting breakthroughs.
Yeah.
So other mitigation methods. That's why I asked for the graphs. I suspected that's the case. And then it's even stronger recommendation for the booster, because a lot of these, my guess is also some portion of them must be waning, as well as proximity to other carriers.
No, it's unfortunate that we talk about what's causing this as kind of a family holiday, but unfortunately, you're close with your family. You're unfortunately close when you're traveling, whatever way you're traveling. I guess it's us living our normal lives in an abnormal time.
Yeah, sometimes the best place to be is in an airplane. If you're going to be in a crowd, be on an airplane.
Yeah, 38,000 feet up there.
So here we have the Littleton Public School COVID-19 cases for the last 6 weeks. This week, we have 3 days into the week so far. There's 9 cases throughout the district, 2 at Shaker Lane, 5 at Russell Street, none at the middle school, 2 at the high school. Middle school is doing a great job.
Yeah.
Here's our vaccination rate, 80% fully vaccinated, 13% partially vaccinated. And hopefully by the end of the month, we'll be up somewhere around 93% for our
I hope so.
vaccination, which would be great.
Before you flip, we're going to need another column sooner or later. Jim, I don't know whether or not the state's going to do it. Are they going to count boosters?
I haven't seen it in the Maven record yet, so I'm not sure if they're adding a field to capture boosters or not.
Oh, wow.
So,
Wow.
So Jim, would you consider someone fully vaccinated if they haven't had their booster?
at this point here, I believe that's still the definition.
Okay, I'm going to echo. I'm sorry, Jim. I don't mean to walk over your thing. From a legal point of view, yes, but from a practical public health point of view, that's, you know, you need the first 2 doses plus the booster. I mean, that's the optimal public health position, as it were.
And in the, I think again, I'm trying to follow a little bit of the Omicron through looking at the CDC. CDC has a page, CDC What's New, and they do a chronological listing of articles and studies and findings and just information. So it's nice if you're trying to get a sense of how things are changing over time. And the last couple, I think the one I put with the email, the update to you, Kevin, was from the 11th. The 14th is a newer one for the 14th. The biggest thing that they changed in the Omicron section of it was the number of states that they're finding it in. But they're saying that still the same public health mitigation methods, and they were talking about boosters in there, protect against this as protects against the other variants. So can't stress that enough.
Yeah, the only folks who raise the issue of the legal definition are the ones who want to play games with the legal aspect of requiring vaccination or basically funding it through federal funds and all the rest. But here in our location, we have to look very seriously, given our cases, that without boosters, without the booster, it's both Delta and Omni should it arrive in sufficient numbers.
No, and I think there's some discussion about what fully vaccinated is going to mean, but at this point, I think it still does mean the completion of the two-dose series or one J&J.
Got it.
I think, again, a nice graphic about eligibility for boosters. At this point here, because the Pfizer vaccine is you need to have ultra cold refrigeration to be able to store it. We just don't have the capability to do that. There may be I think Pfizer has something called Comirnaty, which is the general use vaccine, which I think has the ability to be stored a little differently. So if that is the case, we certainly would order that and provide that as boosters if that's allowed.
Well, in the real world, all I got to tell you is that you can't tell the difference at the booster, because it's the individual immune system that's almost like counts for almost like 86% of the robust response.
The only thing that using the Pfizer would do is let us be able to boost 15 and 17-year-olds, because Moderna somehow still, and it just kind of scratches my head, is they haven't been able to get their stuff approved under 18. So.
All right. If there aren't any other questions, we can move on to our next agenda item.
Kevin, you have a couple of hands from the audience if you want to take public comments.
Sure.
George, would you like to state your name and address, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name is George A. Sanders, 672 Great Road. I want to ask you, Mr. Chairman, if I could make a comment to the previous public hearing, because I had my hand up,
Oh, I'm sorry.
but I wasn't recognized.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to ask a question, if I can.
Please.
I wanted to know if you put in a temporary curtain pulling type situation, say for the gymnasium that he had there in the basement between the living room, if that would be considered a wall, if you put a temporary, I know it's mounted.
No, I don't believe it would be considered a wall. No.
Yeah, that's a good option because the gym would sort of kind of close off. They could put up a nice pull curtain wall there, which could go all the way back to the theater. And they could just open it up past to get in, which would pacify what they want. That's just me thinking, okay?
Yeah, no, I agree.
My comment with regards to the mask, as you well know, you all in a very difficult time with this crisis upon the world. And as we see this new spinoff on the variants, lo and behold, it's said to be that if you have the 2 Pfizer shot, that the new variants only offers 33% protection. That is sort of kind of very low. And with the booster sort of kind of boosts you up. And I agree with Mike. I think that if we have 3 things currently, then I would consider the 3 things to be current in saying that then you are fully, at this particular point in time, you're fully protected by having the 3. If you only have the 2, then you are not. But although we know that Moderna hadn't came out with one yet, or at least gotten it approved, and the cross is that they said before you could do the cross with it, Moderna versus Pfizer, and I don't know what happened to that as to why Pfizer couldn't be used, for those that got the Moderna 2 shots there. But nevertheless, as you well know, this is a critical time. And I think as stuff is coming available as to what is going on with this new variant, every day, I just listened on the news today that Cornell had 900 plus, and they immediately says, okay, let's stop it here, put the brakes on. Okay, we're going to go online for the final testing there. This thing is moving at a rapid pace. Mm-hmm. And the scientists are certain, as you well know, that they're trying to get a hold to this thing. And I guess they're doing a pretty good job to a certain extent. We haven't had a major blowout with it. I think it's in some like 36 states right now. But my main concern is with regard to this test that the school wants to do. I'm told that they're saying, well, at least the chair of the school committee is saying that he look at it as a way for students to motivate students to get vaccinated. Well, I think that is a poor example of exposing vaccinated kids, especially when we know what we got on board right now, yep, to have to go through that, and they could, where they don't have the booster, if they Pfizer, they're at the 33% if they get hit with this current variance that we have. I think if you want to motivate and encourage students to get a test, then parents need to listen to the health board meetings and understand what is going on and what risks that their children are up against by not getting vaccinated. So I think from my standpoint, this is not the time to go out here and try a test to say to motivate students. I disagree with that totally. I think if you want to motivate them, you explain to them what this thing is and let them look at the statistic from the scientific point that this is a killer. It will kill people. And by you not protecting your children, for whatever reason it may be, the point is not to expose kids that are already vaccinated to a point of them possibly catching the current variants that is going around now. If they got the Pfizer, then it says that it only offers 33% protection. No. I suggest strongly that this board, which is the body that has the ultimate authority, is to say, put on brakes here. Let's take a look and see what is really happening now. And let's try and look back in January after these children come back. And let's see where we at then. There's going to be more data that's going to come forth. And we'll have a better, hopefully, we'll have a better handle as to what is really going on with the spread ability of the current variants.
Well,
I thank you kindly for letting me have the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Yeah,
to
and
speak,
if
sir.
you have some time, I don't know if you have a copy of the letter that you'd sent us all, but we may, if you have some time to hang around and want to read that into the record, after we talk to the folks with the school committee.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Dr. Clenchey. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Chris Anderson.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
How you doing? My name's Chris. I'm joining this meeting representing Rebel Builders in Newton. We were actually on
Hang on, Chris. Yeah, you
Sure.
were you're late. That was 7:05.
Yeah, I haven't.
We talked about it a little bit, and Jim is going to talk to you probably tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Yeah, I just hadn't gotten a Zoom link, so I was navigating the website trying to find it.
Okay. Jim, did you want to say something to Chris before?
Well, I was going to say, one of the questions, Chris, I had, and as I mentioned to the board, I may have asked you here by error, is the basement of the house finished?
The basement is unfinished.
Okay. So what I mentioned to the board, I had a bunch of these plans kind of bopping in my mind. I think the board's policy now is to allow one additional room beyond. And I think based on the plans that you had provided for the existing and then the proposed, that you're at that. So I think you'll fall under the board's deed restriction policy, which means we can approve it with the recording of a deed restriction as long as it's not exceeding 4 bedrooms and 10 rooms total.
Perfect. All right. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So we'll get back to our public hearing on the regarding the Board of Health mask mandate, item A, discussion and potential vote to provide the Littleton Public Schools with a waiver for Littleton High School to offer mask flexibility to students and staff for a trial period beginning January 18th and ending on February 4th, 2022. Quickly, I just wanted to share my screen because the last time we discussed this, we put out there some conditions for mask flexibility, and the school committee sent this back. Dr. Clenchey sent this back. So just a couple things they wanted to adjust, edit, change, delete, etc. 100% active pool testing participation for those that choose mask flexibility, and that the participants would be identified somehow visibly. And their comments are that the participant verification will occur through the Aspen student portal, and student compliance will be handled through already established routines and procedures that have been implemented within the school. Below, you can see the rationale for that. And if anyone from the board has any comments or questions, I'm sure there's someone. Oh, Dr. Clenchey's here, and so is Matt Hunt. Great. Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The comment I just like to make is that events have overtaken, not events, but basically almost the nearly expected change in the terrain regarding what's going on in the community. We have extensive community spread. And I'm very pleased to see that shall we say, that the mitigation efforts that continue in the school are not intended to be, but they're working rather well. And I think that at this point, it's premature for us to consider a relaxation of the mask requirement for the high school. The existence of extensive community spread is basically the reservoir that basically turns out to invade and overtake the schools. This has been the history. The schools are a very good predictor of what next week's are going to look like because of the report earlier. But still, the major place where things start is outside the schools. And given the mitigation success the schools had, I think that during this, shall we say, turbulent surge in the Delta alone and the breakthroughs that we're seeing, whatever the cause, is reason enough for us to ask that we delay further consideration of the waiver.
Well, let me go through the response to the conditions that we sent over, just so we can get a full picture. There was the one regarding the no visuals on the folks that were participating actively in the pool testing program, except I guess that they won't be wearing a mask. That's a visual. But, and then the mandatory active pool testing participation, they didn't feel comfortable implementing that either. And here's the rationale behind that. And let's see what else. They decided that they were comfortable that if there were ever over 10 cases in the school at any one time, they didn't feel that the doubling of the case count would be as good of an indication as just a flat number of 10 cases. So if it were to go to 11, that would be the end of said mask flexibility plan. And all other conditions were in place and agreed to. Does anyone from the board have any questions, comments, concerns? And then we'll hear from Dr. Clenchey and Matt Hunt. Hi, Dr. Clenchey. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. Thanks for your response.
Sure. Thank you for taking the time to go through the response. I'm assuming the board's had a chance to look at the rationales prior to the meeting tonight. Just one thing and I should have highlighted a little differently, the third bullet point for conditions, we added in there for students under the age of 18. When a student reaches 18 years of age, they have certain rights, and one of those rights would be to make a decision on their own as to whether they want to take part in mask flexibility, provided they meet all the other conditions. I'm happy to answer any questions. I mean, basically the wristbands, when we consulted with our lawyer, and she certainly said right away that it would be self-identifying, and you already have a mechanism for tracking students. So it would be very, very hard to establish what lawyers would call a standard of bearing. We do have processes in place. As everybody knows, we've been looking at and managing mask mandates for a year and a half. We've done a good job of having our students comply, and we feel that with the processes we have in place, we can certainly do this effectively and efficiently. We would be cross-referencing our pool testing list with the approvals for students to exercise mask flexibility. Teachers would be receiving a list after pool testing every week during the trial period. So we feel very strongly that more than takes care of any concerns. And we work very hard to build a climate of trust in our schools. and as an educator for many years, educational leader for many years, that's one of the key qualities you want to establish in your student body is trust and respect. And I feel very proud of what we've accomplished in our district. Labeling students with wristbands, et cetera, would certainly be contradictory to what we've done in our district for years. The pool testing for extracurricular, co-curricular activities, as explained, we don't want to deter students from taking part in these activities. We feel that most of the students would take part in the mass flexibility program anyway. We do have co-op teams, and co-op teams are teams that we form with other schools, so it'd be very difficult to enforce fairly that we've had, have students from 2 other school districts on our teams, and it would be messy. MIAA, the High School Interscholastic Athletic Association, has already mandated indoor masks or masks for indoor sports until at least January 15th. And my last paragraph is something that I think I really need to emphasize. We do have students in all of our schools that, not many, but they are legally mask exempt. We wouldn't feel that it would be appropriate to restrict those students from taking part in extracurricular athletic programs. When we looked at the doubling of cases, we spent a long time looking at this. Our community has been very clear for months, probably over a year, that they would rather see data points. When we looked at the number as 10 as the maximum before we would go back to mask wearing until we were at 10 or under again, it represents about 2% of our high school population, which is a number we feel with the data that we've had for a year and a half that we can still keep control of the spread of COVID-19, or more correctly, not the spread, the number of cases. We've always been successful in bringing those case counts down rather quickly with our mitigation strategies. That number would apply quite nicely to our other schools if we ever reach that point where we would consider offering mass flexibility to the other 3 schools in our district, hopefully down the road sometime. And that's really it. All other conditions that were mentioned, we certainly are in support of.
Okay. Hi, Matt. Did you have any comments?
No, I think Dr. Quenchy laid it out pretty well there.
Any comments from the board? Questions? Matt? Dan?
Kind of an operational piece. Certainly, I understand the concern with wristbands. So I guess I would love for you to walk me through a little bit of the day-to-day and the week-to-week process. So you are going to use Aspen. Is that how it's going to be described? You've listed it's going to be tracked in Aspen. You've also just said it's going to be a separate list compiled, cross-reference between pool testing, parental or student of majority, authorization to participate, and then a list will be generated and sent out to teachers, staff, everyone. Does that sound accurate so far?
It is, and Aspen is our primary tool that we're using, but as you can appreciate, we may have students that are absent during pool testing, so they will be ineligible to have mass flexibility for that particular week. So we need a means of cross-referencing, and the quickest way to do that is to create a Google form for every pool testing cycle and submit the names of the students that are eligible for mass flexibility for that particular week. If a student misses pool testing for that week, they are ineligible to exercise mass flexibility until they're pool tested the next week. And our pool testing occurs on Monday. We would not permit max flexibility for those students until Wednesday because we want to make sure the results are back prior to moving forward with those students. As I mentioned before, I mean, we've been looking at mass compliance for a year and a half and have been very successful working with our students. Our students are responsible, and our staff has been excellent in helping make sure that compliance is maintained.
and I don't disagree with that, although certainly it's a different model that you're looking at now. When you're looking at a near universal compliance piece with a few medical exceptions, that's certainly a different
Sure.
level of challenge than a week to week, potentially, 50 or 60% of your population. That is certainly a much different compliance and monitoring challenge than, I don't know what your numbers are, perhaps 10 or 20 medically sensitive students or medically challenged students that you need to not monitor. So I'm just trying to walk it through. So I come in, I do my pool testing as a student. I've got my form from mom, and at some point after that event, the office is going to do their piece and it's going to go out. So I'm wearing my mask until the office sends out to all the teachers that says, and there's an announcement overhead or something, those people who are eligible can now demask. Or I guess I'm trying to figure out, I really am curious just that operationalizing it piece. I love that procedures you've been using. I would just love to hear kind of nut and bolts how that is.
Yeah. Well, if you recall, we're going to pool test all students that have submitted the proper paperwork a week before we start the trial. So we're going to have our baseline established. So it's just a matter of cross-referencing as they go through the pool testing line on a Google form, which can be accessed by our clerical staff in our offices, and they can be creating those lists as the pool testing is occurring. So the time lag is not probably as great as one would think. I'd also like to say that if we had a school of 2,500 students, I would be feeling very different about this mass trial. But we have 450 students in our school. Hopkinton had 58% of their students electing to take advantage of mass flexibility. So, we're looking 300 students maybe. So I don't consider this for a big change in monitoring, because our staff know our kids. It's not as daunting as it may seem to somebody that isn't in schools every day. So I feel very comfortable with that process. The principal has been involved in designing it. He's met with student council, met with staff, and they feel pretty good about the plan that we have in place.
Thank you.
I have a question. Not so much, for me, the question is, however difficult the logistics appear, and I suspect that they are to some extent, you could probably overcome them. The issue for me is that I view the schools, the high school, as part of the Littleton community, not as a separate domed area. Even though while they walk into the school, they are, shall we say, more highly protected than they probably are even in some hospitals, to be perfectly frank, because you don't have lots of sick people running around. So the question I have is that in your mind, given Hopkinton ran their test briefly during the period when the weather was still, shall we say, warm and people were still outdoors in the community, the counts for Hopkinton never achieved the quote ratio of cases to population that we're now sitting at. That is, we're looking at extensive, I want to emphasize, community spread. In your own, and given your experience over the years, I don't really, either Matt or you could address this. Do you really feel from your position, without giving up a thing on getting to the point, all of us would like to get to the point where we can get the masks off wherever we can. Do you feel that the community status at the moment is such that it's fair to the parents, fair to the students, fair to the staff, everyone in the schools, given the success that you've had, to put in jeopardy at this moment the health, welfare, and staying in school power that you've been able to implement for Littleton? Given the background, given the context in which we're operating.
Kelly, you want to handle that, or you want me to chime in?
You started and I'll chime in.
Pardon?
Why don't you begin?
Yeah, I would just say, for me, I think I'm pretty comfortable with the mitigation strategies we have in place now. One thing I'm going to tell you is, at the high school, this is going to guarantee kids are testing, and I think George misquoted me earlier to talk about something I said about getting more participation. This is going to get kids participating in the testing. We have a lot of kids sign up for the testing. Doesn't mean that they're actually doing it. They may be like, oh, the line's too long. These kids have to test. That is one of our best ways to keep COVID down in the schools. And the other thing I'm going to tell you is, do you guys even consider the mental health of our students? The kids are not all right. I work in schools. Look around. These kids need a return to normalcy. That should be a number one concern for a lot of you. You guys are looking at the picture of the community, but you're not looking at the anxiety, the depression that a lot of these kids are facing every day. It's bad.
Matt, excuse me, before you go down the road of selling me that, are you trying to tell me that you're attributing the admitted mental difficulties, emotional and
It's a
psychological
contributing factor. Yeah.
And you think that the cause of this, that most of it is due to the fact that they're wearing a mask, as opposed to the fact that the disease itself is what causing the anxiety in the majority?
I'm telling you that on our surveys, when we talked to the kids, they talked about feeling bad about themselves, talked about having, not being able to see other kids smile, not being able to feel normal. They want the masks gone.
Can you share those survey results?
I think we are. Kelly, did we not already share those?
Yeah, we saw this. The surveys didn't ask the question to differentiate, and I'm not trying to catch you out. Most surveys of the type that you mentioned are not interested in distinguishing between a mask and the disease. Okay, but when it's done, it's the disease. It's not being able to. Then you fill in the blank, whether you have a mask on or not.
I'm telling you, they're outside of school. These kids most of them are not wearing masks. That's in the community. Again, to me, whether you want to postpone it or not, that is not real. I'm just telling you the facts of what I see. Working in a school district, day in, day out, working with kids. I've worked for kids for 20 years in schools. I have very frank conversations with them. This is what they're telling me. They would love to doff the mask. A lot of them, most schools, struggle to keep the kids wearing the masks. And as soon as they're out in the hallway, the mask is down. I think it would be okay. I'd like to see a 3-week trial period. If you don't feel safe implementing it now, then I want to have at least the idea in place for when we're ready to do it, that we can put the 3 weeks. But I think, some people in the community are just worried it's just going to keep kicking the can. There's always going to be another variant. There's always going to be something else coming up. There's always going to be a reason not to do it. We can come up with those excuses.
The what? The excuses?
We can come up with excuses why we shouldn't do it every time. There's always going to be something. We're going to have to live with COVID at some point. Now, like I said, if we decide not to go January 18th, it's not going to break my heart. I'm fine with that decision if you choose to postpone it. But I do think we have to come to the reality that we have to look at a point where this is a worthy trial. We have the structures in place to do it. And I think that, like I said, when I want as many kids testing, because I think the testing is equally as important as the masks. And
Matt, could you tell me what living with COVID is from your perspective?
Living with COVID? I think living with COVID is going to be, we're going to have periods where we have, we are going to have to mask up until we're out of there. I think that I think we will probably be seeing Omicron, we'll see other variants. Looking at different viruses through the course of time, they tend to mutate. They will continue to mutate. Omicron looks like it's going to be a more milder case, but the trade-off is it's going to be more easily spread. I think you're going to continue to see these things. I think, people are going to be worn out in some regards to the COVID restrictions. Littleton is one of the few communities around here right now that has a full mask mandate.
That includes Westford, right?
Westford, yeah. One of the few communities. I mean, I go down, I don't know about you, but if I go down Dunkin' Donuts or someplace, and I see people walk up to the door, they see mask required, and a lot of them are like, okay, I'll throw my shirt up over my face so that I can go in. And, it's a faulty system. I think that it's difficult to enforce, unfortunately. I'll go down, I'll do it because I don't want to have to, if I worry about it, I'm wearing my mask in, Market Basket, but I would do that anyway. I think it's going to be tough for a lot of you to keep this going. I think the longer it drags on, I think more people are going to resist, and that's what we're seeing.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from board members before we go to public comment?
I did want to say something. Matt, thank you for your input and thoughts on this. I'm obviously new to this whole plan. And I think one of the catches for me is, as you mentioned, there are going to be times where we have to mask up, and there are going to be times where maybe we're in a lull, and it's hard to forecast those. What we know right now is there is a new variant spreading. We're not sure exactly how that's going to impact us. But for me, just fundamentally, on January 15th is when a lot of bodies in the state and our own town might make changes to their existing protocols. And I would yes, it does sound like kicking the can down the road, and that's a bummer, but I wouldn't feel comfortable trying to make a decision on a direction, not knowing what MIA might say or the Massachusetts school board is going to say, whether they loosen or frankly strengthen their restrictions on mask wearing. So I think that'd be the piece for me. And what are your thoughts on which direction that might go? And do we become more reckless by putting a trial in place, no matter how well designed, when our other supporting bodies are going in a more conservative direction?
Well, I think one of the things that I said our last meeting is you have the pull the plug option. I asked for a vote on, but one of our things that we agreed to is that if the circumstances on January 18th are not ideal, then we postpone it. But I don't see a reason why you wouldn't vote for it at this point to say, if things are okay, we're ready to go. So the school is prepared. So we're not continually kicking the can. But like I said, that is in the requirements that we agreed to. If you decide on January 15th, say, Littleton School, it's a no-go. Okay, then it's a no-go, and we deal with it then. But if the situation is right, if things are better, and they more than likely they probably won't be, but they may be. And I want to be ready to do that. I want the schools to be ready to implement this 3-week trial when they're ready. So I would urge you to vote for this and then utilize that when it comes to it. If you find January 15th, we find after the holidays, yeah, this isn't a good time. Okay, we'll postpone it. We'll postpone it to February, after February vacation, and then we'll go from there. But I think the point is that the schools has put in and agreed to everything the Board of Health has put forward, pretty much, with the exception of the extracurricular activities, which we really can't monitor and force kids to participate in the testing program. So my point is, why not vote for this? And then, like I said, if it's not ideal, then say it then. But I think other than that, I think we all agree that at some point we want to try this. We want to try and go maskless. So why not just vote, and then if it's not ideal, kick the can then. But at least then we'll know that we have a goal in mind.
Thanks, Matt.
Can I say something?
Dr. Clench has his hand up, Gino. Hang on.
Thanks, Kevin. Just wanted to say that these are difficult decisions, and Matt did allude to the fact that many students in schools across the nation and in our community as well are struggling with mental health. There's a variety of reasons for that. This is not normal, even though we're all back in school. It's not normal. It's a stressful year for students and staff. But I'd like to think that we've put our heads together here. We have some conditions that have some check mechanisms in place. We're very conservative with over 10 students. We mask up. So that's a check and balance right there. If we find January 18th rolls around or before that, the week before that, we have more than 10 cases, we're not going to start the trial. So I'm very conservative, and I feel pretty comfortable with that number. I know that the numbers are going up. I don't think anybody should be surprised. I mean, it's following the same pattern as it did last year. We have different variants, but the pattern is similar. As a Board of Health, you also, at this point in time, have the right to rescind the exemption. So I see this as a safe trial moving forward. We have checks and balances in place that are going to prevent us from starting a trial if our numbers are too high in the high school. And for goodness sakes, we're all reasonable. We're not going to enter this trial period if the numbers go sky high. I don't think any of us would be willing to do that. But at some point in time, we need to start moving forward. And I'm not suggesting this is the optimal time, but I can't think of any reason with the conditions that we have in place that it would be an increased risk, because the checks and balances are there.
Thank you. Gino, did you have one comment? And then we're going to go to public comment.
Okay, my suggestion would be, Doctor, would you be going along for January 18, and let's say we give you 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, the number will increase. Right now we have a 67. Okay, if that will decrease, okay, from after January 18, and you're gonna still have the testing. You're gonna have testing every day on those students, especially the high school, and then will take us 2 weeks. And if it goes below, then maybe we can increase the time. If it goes up over 67 again, then we'll stop right there, and they're going to have to wear the mask, whether they like it or not. What do you think, Doctor? This is Gino speaking to you.
Thanks, Gino. I'm having trouble following you. There are the 67 cases in the community, and I'm assuming so. If so, we all know there's a correlation to what happens in our community. There's a direct correlation to the number of cases we have in our school. So the maximum of 10 cases at the high school in 1 week is a mechanism that already kind of takes that into account.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying, but I think that's already built into the conditions.
Right.
We're going to go to public comment.
This is a suggestion that I make because I'm only one member. And then if it goes down after 2 weeks, maybe we can extend it. I leave it up to you. That's my suggestion, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Gino. We're going to go to public comment. Mr. George Sanders has his hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me be unequivocally clear about what I say. And that is, that it was said that the incentive was to get students to get vaccinated. That's not misunderstood in any fashion or form by me. I believe one is that we are fortunate that a piece of cloth over our mouth and nose can stop the virus and offer protection to us. We're fortunate in that way. The virus could be a lot more potent that we need other than cloth to grow across our mouth and nose. It is important to understand that this virus itself is not the fact of kicking the can down the road. It's the fact that we need to follow the science. Right now, we don't have all the information coming from the scientists with regards to the latest variants on this. The COVID-19, then you get the spinoff, which becomes a byproduct of COVID-19, which is the variants that we have now. Now we have one that's been transmitted twice the time of the Delta. It is of great concern to us. I think that the schools should be educating the parents about really what is going on here and what is happening and what the risk is that they put their children in with regard to taking their masks off and wearing them in class. Are you willing to put the teachers in a situation to be the lead for a week and let them wear no mask and see what happens? The question is this. We need to be concerned about the community as a whole. Are you going to test these children every day with the rapid test? Where the governor sent out 2 million of tests now for the communities that hit the heaviest rate down, which was 100 and some communities out of 351 cities and towns, that they wanted to issue this to the families out there so they could take these tests and come up without having to go to the lab. That's a step that's been done right now. So it tells you that this variance is something that is moving on a fast track. And we don't know all about what it's going to do. So therefore, we should, first of all, what is the hurry? What is the race up against? I ask, what is the objective and the goal of doing this test? What is there to get out of it? I came up with some ideas saying clarity, but at the same token, I need to understand what is the push to be ready to go here and there. Yeah, this virus is going to be around for a while. The normalcy is going to be around. And whenever we get to that point that we can say, okay, we pretty much back to normal now. Well, hopefully that they have a control on the viruses and the variants. Right now, we don't have that. And the best thing that I said to this Board of Health, who is responsible for our health and well-being in the great community of the town of Littleton, you have the authority to stand up and protect the children in the school based on the information that you have available right now, knowing we got a beast out there that's loose and we don't have control over it. And we don't have enough information to know what's going on. Maybe by January 15, we'll have a better setting as to what. Why would you hook the horse before the cart? How is it that you're going to come up and make a decision now and say, okay, we're going to do this and that, and then come along the 15th, so, oh no, well, we can't do that. No. Don't make no decision until you get more information from the scientific community and the state and the CDC and the FDA as to really what is going on with this latest virus. That could be another spinoff. That could be more deadly than the one we got on the Omicron. So I don't see this. I've worked with this. And I know you just don't take risks when you're talking about lives here. You need to educate the parents and let them know what their children is up against. What happens if a child comes down with it and the child dies? Then what the school going to say? You have to be smarter than a rock here. You don't go and do something and expose children to something that you absolutely do not have to do. You do not have to do this at this point in time. And I recommend strongly to this Board of Health that you do not give them the approval. Let's look at January, and when the kids come back, and let's see how things are at that time. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Are there any more public comments? No. Okay, so I guess we're at the point where we need to take a vote just to move things along. I'm actually going to go and make a motion, and I know it's rare that a chair does this, but I'm going to make a motion that the Littleton Board of Health provide the Littleton Public Schools with a waiver for Littleton High School to offer mass flexibility to students and staff for a trial period beginning January 18th and ending February 4th, with the caveat that we look at the current situation and the numbers on January 12th and decide at that time if January 18th is the time to move forward with it. Yes, Mike.
I'd like to just don't want to open up this because it sounds it's fairly important in terms of really looking at the way one has to look at this, but putting a fixed number of 10 on shall we say the trigger, if you have more than 10 you're finished, I think misses the point about the virus. It may feel the humans may feel very nice about having a fixed number like 10. But when you're talking about a virus, you should be really looking at, not really should be, but you have to look at their real world because it's our world. It's double. In other words, the current Delta has a doubling time 4 to 6 times greater than its predecessor. And if Omni should come in our pathway, I don't know if it will, I hope not, it doubles that. So the sign that something is amiss is when the number of cases double. If you want to start off with a baseline of 5 and say we will start the trial when we have 5 cases in the schools and the community spread has going in the other direction that the Board of Health is comfortable with seeing, I think that's a better route to go than putting a fixed number on you. Because if your base is 5 and you reach 10, then can 20 be far enough away, whether it's happening in the community and eventually gets to the schools, or it shows up first in modest number of the schools that reflect earlier what's going on in the community. Because the reporting sequence is schools first, then the community. So as was discussed earlier today with Katrina, she can predict pretty well. She missed the mark this time, not through her fault. She predicted on the basis of the current level of COVID in the schools, what the community count would be like, not because the schools cause it, because the tempo is the same. So all I'm trying to say is I'm not against 10. I'm not for 5. I'm not for, what I'm interested in is making sure we track the right phenomenon, which in this case is doubling. That's all. I mean, it's the only caveat I've got with the agreement. I think that the chair has made a good motion. That's the only change I would suggest or urge us to make in moving forward with I'd like to see the trial started tomorrow, frankly. I don't like the mask either.
No.
I was just going to say that I think the issue that we had with that, and Dr. Clenchey can correct me if I'm wrong, was there wasn't a baseline. So, we worried about if the number's 0, how do you double 0? If the number's 1 and it doubles to 2, well, I think the baseline would be an important.
I have a solution. So I made a motion.
I second it.
And let me finish. The baseline will be taken on January 10th. Correct?
Yeah.
So on January 12th at our meeting, we'll have a baseline and we can come to a mutual agreement upon how that doubling the rate or the number is going to be that emergency stop point.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, Kevin, we could do that the week of the 10th. My understanding is we were going to do it the week before. We're going to pool test everybody that has their information in on the 10th, and then establish a baseline during the week of the 10th. But if you would prefer to establish that benchmark the week prior to that, we could certainly do that. I do have a point of clarification, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding Mike correctly. So unless I'm missing something, there would be a possibility with Mike's suggestion of having up to 20 cases in a 2-week period. Is that a correct?
In this hypothetical scenario, yeah.
Well, I would like to say that I'm more conservative than that.
I know your number is better.
But I understand Mike's point of view.
Yeah.
And I do support the doubling concept, but I would not be comfortable with 20 cases.
I'm sure
The average per week case count at the high school is 2. So
Right.
we don't want to see 20.
No.
Totally sweet one.
I
Don't
guess the
even
point
see
is
10.
to go from 2 to 4 to 8 is less than 10.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Well, I think if we can get a handle on the baseline, if we can get that, Dr. Clenchey, you think those baseline results will be in on the 12th?
We can make it happen.
Okay.
And the pool testing would, I mean, if the motion is supported, then we have to have everything in and ready to go by the 10th to do pool testing for everybody that's signed up. So
Right.
if we want to do that baseline the week before and have it ready for Monday, that's not a problem.
That would be great. Does anyone need me to remake the motion?
You can remake it.
I understand the motion. I just want to make sure that that last piece is substantial public health risk.
Yeah.
We're defining substantial because the Board of Health is maintaining the control to say, even if your plan is splendid, if the community rate is accelerating at a rate that we're not comfortable with, that's also a reason to postpone or end this trial.
And there might be a statewide mask mandate in place by then. So we'll see. So there's a motion and a second. Can I take a roll call vote?
Yep.
Gino Fratelloni,
Ferroni, yes.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
Matt Wason,
That way, and yes.
Mike Zeldin,
Mike Zeldin, yes.
and Kevin Baker, yes. Thank you, Dr. Clenchey. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Matt, thanks a lot. Dr. Clenchey, thank you very much.
Yeah, guys,
Dan,
I trust you guys to make the right decisions. That's why I said, like, as long as we have a plan in place, and if you feel, you guys are the Board of Health. If you feel at that time it's not the time to implement it, then that's great. But I'm glad that we can come to agreement on having a plan.
We trust you too. Remember that.
thank you. Dan, did you have a comment?
A quick request for Dr. Clenchey and the school committee. Certainly as a parent of a student at the high school, I'm on the list. We see the health notifications that goes out. I believe those only go out to basically the parent list for each class. Is there a way that we can add, even if it's Janet who can then share it with the board, just so we have a little bit more real-time numbers of how the schools are looking? You're seeing those numbers real time. Me as a parent is seeing them somewhat real time. My guess is Mr. Fratelloni, Mr. Zeldin, perhaps, and I'm not sure about Mr. Wason, probably wouldn't be seeing those real time. So we're only going to get those numbers on Friday or the week after. So is there a way that we can add us in the list, or one of the admins can simply, when they're sending out, add the Board of Health email address as an add-on to those lists?
Oh, I think we have a number of letters that go out, and one is a district letter that goes out to all families. We're actually going to be discussing that, but we would be more than happy to include you on that list.
Thank you.
No, that'd be great. Thanks. A little bit more real-time information as we're looking at this trial. That certainly, if I see 5 letters in a day, which sometimes happens because as you're catching up with pool testing and stuff, it would certainly perhaps bring the board's attention to, let's look at this a little bit closer. Let's follow up with yourself, the principals, and whatever we felt needed to happen. But that real time, so we're not a week and a half in before we go, we didn't realize there were 9 cases and then 9 cases where we haven't hit that threshold, or whatever that threshold we pick is, but hasn't hit that clinical threshold. So we haven't pulled the plug on anything perhaps, but still clinically concerning, and maybe it warrants a little bit closer review, even though it hasn't hit whatever magic number we all pick.
No, that would be fine. Kevin, I'm a little hesitant in bringing this up, but I think it's necessary. It's nothing bad. It's just that I'm not sure as a Board of Health whether you're aware that if a student contracts COVID-19, once they're cleared, they are unable to take part in pool testing for 3 months. And the reason for that is PCR tests would most likely test positive for up to 3 months. So what we've agreed to would not include anybody, any student or any staff member that has had COVID
In the past 3 months.
days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just so you're aware of that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have a discussion and potential vote on the COVID-19 public health mandate, the emergency regulation of the Littleton Board of Health. Current mask requirement is up until January 15th. So we wanted to discuss next steps with that. Any comments? Mike?
Sorry, Matt, did you want to say something? Yeah, I think that at the moment, given the, I wouldn't say it's totally unknown. The only thing that isn't known is about the variant, which is at the moment, it's on the doorstep. I have no idea if it's going to enter the room, as it were. It has so many mutations in it, and it is not as clear as one would like about the extent of disease it promotes. However, I want to pick up on something that Dr. Clenchy mentioned, the fact that they don't do the PCR test until for several weeks after a student is tested positive or has had COVID disease. And that's because of the long-lived nature of the viral particles resident that are picked up by the PCR. I just want to add something to it. Not that the PCR can detect this, but it is not yet clear. I just want to put this out. It's not yet clear to what extent mild COVID, which is classified as runny nose, cough, what we'll call more minor, so-called minor flu-like disease, if that does not result in what we'll call long COVID, which has a big longer name now that CDC's given it. The number of cases that are occurring in young people, regardless of race and location, as well as adults, in what's called long COVID is growing. So, and of the total number, the number of people who are suffering from what's called long COVID, can't be fixed as a percentage of the people who have COVID simply because the resources aren't there yet. We don't know, but we do know that, I'll give it a simple summary, is that the target used by the virus, whether it's any of these SARS-CoV-2 viruses, they enter through the same docking position that the very first coronavirus uses. That is, it's the same one, the ACE one it's called. And that particular docking location is, unfortunately for us, spread among practically all major cell and organ types. It's not restricted to one or two like the heart or the liver or the pulmonary system. It's all over, including the brain, including your gut. It's everywhere. So the possibility exists, we just don't know, that there may be longer term effects of even mild COVID that we don't totally understand. There's no question that the frequency of long COVID presents itself in what's called moderate COVID. That's when there is breathing difficulty, and very clearly in what's called severe COVID. What the clinical division has been made, I'm sure Dan knows about this as well. So I'm just saying that the unknown territory is really unknown. And I'm hoping it turns out that moderate COVID is the last, shall we say, the last barrier. So I want to make it clear, this is not a trivial disease. We don't know enough about it. And we should be as careful as possible and thoughtful as possible as we strip away mitigation efforts or think about it. So I would like to suggest that we either delay or agree to take up the issue of prolonging the mask mandate in town and link it, if we can, to increase booster activity. That would please me a lot more than smacking away at masking all the time. I'd like to get more people boosted, very frankly. I'd like to buy time until these new pharmaceuticals, which are very, very good, They really look fantastic. As an ex-pharmaceutical developer, I'm jealous as all hell because these results are so clean. It's incredible. Of course, they've had almost 20 years of HIV behind it to make it so, but they are probably the missing piece that makes this virus, and probably it's going to happen next year. Sorry to take up your time.
Was there a motion in there?
Yes, I take a motion that we delay decision of the townwide mandate until January 12, the date that you selected for decision about the schools.
Is there a second?
I'm sorry, Mike, you were a little bit broken up. So you'd like to, right now we have the mask mandate with review on January 12.
Okay.
You want, I believe, is that where it's not a sunset, but that's our next formal review?
That's our next meeting, so we can.
Yeah,
just
that's all I'm
go
saying
with
is
that.
we make a decision about that on the 12th, not now.
Okay,
That's all I'm trying to do is just.
all right, then we can move on if no one else has a motion. Or... Gino, you're muted.
Me off. I didn't say nothing bad. Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else coming up.
No. We have a couple more things on the agenda.
I want to make sure that you got my message.
We're running a little late, but we have an 8 o'clock discussion on Neshoba Associated Boards of Health. I'd like to hear an update from Building Commissioner Ed Mullen on the reorganization and recommendation for future health department. We can start with that, and then we'll discuss the options moving forward with Neshoba Board of Health. 3 options that we have.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Guy, can you hear me? Can you see me? Let's see.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I can see you very well.
Thanks, Gino. How am I looking?
You're handsome.
So update is that we're moving forward with the reorganization. I just provided an update with the select board a few meetings back. In the presentation or in the discussion, we also talked about relocating the land use and buildings department to the newly vacated lower level of library. And in that, we have identified space for a health agent to have their own office within that space. And Janet has been the first of the whole reorganization. She's now our office manager, administrative assistant. She oversees other office assistants, and she's taken on the role with vigor, and she's been doing a great job. So we look to continue moving forward with that. And in that, we've drafted job descriptions for assistant town planner, assistant conservation agent, and a health agent. We've been in discussions with the HR director. I've also had a few discussions with Mr. Zeldin in how we get there with that job description, because it needs to be before you guys, before it's ever posted for a hire. And then you guys will have to vote to approve the description, and then HR would grade it, and then it could be posted for hiring.
Mhm.
So we're there now. We're there with a few descriptions. HR will give us some edits, and once we have those edits, we'll send it off to you guys, hopefully by your next meeting for review.
Mhm.
And have you taken a look at the pool of potential applicants that are out there online yet, or anything to that matter?
So to identify applicants, we'd have to post, but I can tell you that in my travels as a building official in other towns, I have contacts, and I have spoken to a few people that could possibly be interested in the position as a health agent.
Mhm.
Qualified individuals who would be interested in the position.
So what I wanted to discuss tonight, because we got an update from Jim, just pulling up an email here. Okay, so in his latest weekly report, and I know that we're having this conversation because Littleton has outpaced Neshoba services, and we took a vote at town meeting. And I just wanted to call out, we've gotten this correspondence regarding Neshoba Associated Boards of Health and their Public Health Excellence Grant. And they've hired the full-time staffing under the grant, including a part-time food inspector, full-time health agent, and a full-time communication education specialist. So there may have been some things that over the past few years, Neshoba might have potentially been like missing the Littleton mark on, with just not having the time or the resources. But I just wanted to put it out there that Neshoba is making changes, and maybe Jim can speak to this as well, because we're faced with a decision. Jim needs to come up. He's got a budget meeting, and he needs to know what's happening with Littleton. And he's got a meeting. Is it January, Jim?
Correct.
Okay. So we need to decide if we are going to ask for an extension from Neshoba for 6 months while we sort of put things in place and get ready for this, for the new health agent that you're putting together information on, or if we're going to withdraw effective June 30th, or if we're going to extend services for basically sign on for an additional year, potentially taking advantages of some of the new services Neshoba is able to provide. So I guess I wanted to get your take, Ed, on what where can we see improvement from that sort of thing, and then see if Jim would be able to meet that in any way, shape, or form.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, I think the questions you're asking are really for the board.
Mhm.
Really. I think asking Ed to make this kind of decision is, shall we say, out of the lane. We're elected to, as it were, to as best as we can to make some determination about what works best for public health.
These questions will certainly be asked of the board, but Ed's day to day in the office, seeing, he's in the trenches with Janet, seeing what's happening and what's not happening. But we can start with the board if you like, Mike.
Yeah, I would frankly, and the other piece was missing is that the other idea that has been discussed, and we don't have to get it fulfilled tonight, is to get a different pair of eyes to, as it were, to someone who's been through what we'll call the public health wars, hopefully not including this year's. So, in other words, someone who served as a professional health director, not a sanitarian in another town or city, and basically just take a look at what's been going on here and ask the question, are we big enough? Are we demanding enough? What our needs really are in the real world, as opposed to, I have the feeling we're a teenager in this business and we're sort of betwixt and between. We're neither this nor we're that. And we got to be careful that in the process, we don't wreck the whole family, as it were. So,
I was invited here, so if I may, before you guys get into it, and please, have your discussion, I just want to remind you that first of all, as the Director of Land Use and Buildings, we would love to have Jim as our health agent, first and foremost, health director. He would be fabulous. He would.
Yes.
When we proposed this, he was the first one I asked. Obviously, he has a level of commitment with Neshoba that I respect. And, I think before I finished the sentence, he declined. So, and I respect that. That being said, we did take a vote at town meeting. And at town meeting, the vote was to withdraw from Neshoba Associated Boards of Health. So to do anything other than that would be to not follow the town vote. So effectively with that town vote, I think moving forward with the plan that I had proposed for the reorganization of the land use is the path forward. And, I'm certainly going to sit and listen to your discussion and how we go forward, but I'm going forward with the plan as it was proposed and voted for and approved.
Yeah. What was approved was to end the relationship with Neshoba. It didn't have a timeline on it. So I think that the chair's description of the options are very accurate. Whether or not Neshoba wants to, as it were, engage in anything less than a full, whatever extension, whatever felt, whatever they feel can be negotiated, is worthwhile having that discussion as well. So I don't consider, the pathway that you're describing may be true up to an extent administratively, but not necessarily in terms of what public health, execution administration will be. So, as I said, we're between. So, to get the discussion going, I think we're at the point where it would be useful to have an extension in our relationship with Neshoba, as opposed to
should they be willing to grant it.
Exactly. And the other piece of it has to rest on us. I think that as a board, we have to do something we have not done historically, and that is actively participated in the role that is open to us to play, and that is we're a member of the Neshoba Association, and if a member is unhappy or wants changes made or has suggestions to make or wants to push something forward, that's the arena in which we should be during any extension that's provided. Because no matter what plan we choose, we have to be, as it were, on the alert for all the full scope of duties that a Board of Health director or a health agent has to follow, including the sanitarian, as well as what we'll call the straight public health functions.
Dan?
The quick question for Ed, maybe there's always an administrative side of community's government, and then there's the elected side, and sometimes they don't always communicate as well as we'd like. So it sounds like, Ed's already kind of has a vision. I certainly we kind of talked about it a little bit. This board has, expressed some observations about perhaps, that should it be an independent department? Should it be a health department with a department head? Should it be under something else? I guess my question is that if we would pull out, we saw the posting or the proposed job posting that came out today, just for review, not out to the public. Looking at the scope of responsibility of a health department, the scope that Jim's team provides, on a day-to-day basis, I guess I'm trying to figure out how that transition looks. If we were to say we're done on June 30th, that gives us basically 6 months to be up and running with a fully functional health department, which means providing contact tracing for all the communicable diseases, not just COVID, public health services such as immunizations and clinics and all those great things, as well as disease management for a few things. There's the nursing clinical side. We've got the public health investigations piece, plus we've got food service pools and all those communicable disease, really food-based in those pieces. And then we had Title V and septic pieces, and then all the other random tiny little pieces of MGL that comes under us. So I guess I'm wondering, how in 6 months do we go from a overtaxed and not serving us as completely as we'd love the Neshoba associated boards to a freestanding department who can provide all those services? I guess I'm wondering that how do we, because I see us hiring an agent who may be very, very qualified, but obviously is not qualified to cover all those pieces. What do we do as the coverage in between those things while we either get town meeting to ramp up a department of truthfully 2 or 3 people, maybe part-time, but a department versus, and we don't drop the ball in there in the middle somewhere. Is there a vision? Do you have any idea of a vision from the admin, HR, town administrator side of what that transition looks like?
Yeah. So look, the goal would be to hire somebody with that experience, with enough experience to know what resources are available. Should they need to do more work than they can do themselves, in a day's time or a week's time or a month's time, reaching out to DPH and other resources. There are other consulting firms as well that will offer services per diem should we be in a bind with those needs. As far as contact tracing goes, I know that we've spoken, in-house about, I should say for nursing services, we've spoken in-house about going per diem. It's carried in our budget every year that we pay over to Neshoba for nursing services on top of the services that Jim provides. So we'd carry that money over and try to get maybe a suggestion would be maybe one of the school nurses, for extra cash or part-time as a per diem for nursing services, and coordinating with EHS for clinics such as the flu clinic or any other vaccination clinic that they would try to do. Looking out long-term for the setup of the department, I think that is the goal that when we established the land use department was to bring it in-house and then build it up so that it does stand alone. Similar, we're working on the same idea with facilities. We want to bring that in as well to get it established. We're actually going to put a lot on Janet's plate as the office manager because she's going to handle a lot of calls for a lot of different division managers, department heads, and then hopefully those will, as the town grows, will grow in roles for having their own supported staff. So experience. I think experience is the word I would look for with whoever we're hiring.
Was there a thought? Right now, it's the proposed posting is for a health inspector. Is there? Certainly looks like looking to lead a program, but it's that whole trying to find the language. I want a director, but I don't want to hire a director. It reads through the lines a little bit. And is that the message do we want to send, or do we want to hire a department of one, hire a director with a department of one, but who can really help provide that bigger view? And again, I'm not putting on the spot. I'm really kind of like, as we make this decision, 6 months isn't that far away. We want to make sure whoever we hire has the knowledge to do the job, but also that the working chief model. Our fire department, our police department, they have working chiefs that, when it hits the fan, they can step in and do the job right from stock and hose or pulling a car over to managing a budget, developing a vision, all those other pieces. And it's a lot to ask for any department head, as you know. But this one starting from scratch, I just want to make sure that as we look at posting, that we're also looking at it from that mindset of really we're hiring a director, or certainly in mindset a potential director 6 months from now, that they're ready and skilled to step in and not be, okay, now we're ready for director and we're starting over again.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying, and I agree. I mean, if we could find it, right now we're going to be up against it with the budget, overall in town anyway. So I think we could afford a health agent, a health inspector. Should we be able to suss out, just like we did with, some good news is that, the building department increased permit fees, and we've seen almost double in revenue generation, in 1 year. So I'm thinking that when we are doing permit intake and, in all of the fees that our own health department could collect, potentially we could fund not just a health agent, but a health director with an agent going out a few years. We could then be a department of 2, potentially 3. So that would be great, and then if we could bring a part-time in-house nurse to be available would be, it's the goal, it's the goal to get ready for the next phases of Littleton.
Ed, just a quick question. I know that on December 6th, you had presented some information to the select board regarding the budget pertaining to the health department moving forward. Now, did those figures, can you just let everyone know what those figures were? And what I'm getting at is I hope there's room to increase that number and put an increased number in front of the select board, because whatever we're going to do is going to take more time and more money than we think.
Yeah. As we're finding out in municipal government right now that every position that's out there is being resigned from and moved on to because somebody's offering more money. Headhunters are basically hacking town halls right now, and they're just poaching everybody from every position. So, we're seeing it everywhere, and those numbers, we're in my budget, proposal, we were middle of the road of a grade 11 or 12. I'm not sure now, but it's a high 80s, low 90s number that we'd be looking at to start off with for a yearly salary.
I think it's going to have to start with a 1.
And through advertising, we'll probably find that out if that's the case. Again, with an agent, we shouldn't be paying a 1. With a director, we should be paying over 1. So that's the balance we're going for to get it started, and hopefully that person that comes in under the 1 can carry the ball and either move into that position as director and or be a great second to the person that's the director. So.
Yeah, I think we should focus on giving it our best shot out there if we're going to be advertising something, giving it our best shot and not letting it sit there and get stale, and then going back a month later and increasing numbers.
Right.
Going strong.
Yeah, and like I said, with my municipal experience in other towns, I do have a few individuals that I've spoken to on this level that would consider it. I can't say that they want it, but they would consider it, and they know others as well. So. We do, and with our new HR department and our director, Michelle Vibert is definitely a resource that we can tap as well, and she knows quite a few individuals. So, it's a start, and I know.
So Jim's here because he wants us to give him an answer. He wants us to make a decision so he can go back to his people and put a line item in his spreadsheet or not.
So Mike and I have had some pretty good discussions, and we would love to have some type of assistance from Neshoba Associates, and if we can bring in our own agent sooner and continue that relationship with Neshoba until June 30th, that would be great. If there was potential for some additional assistance from Neshoba beyond the June 30th date that wasn't burdensome to the town, I'd certainly love to hear what that could potentially be. And Jim is the best resource we have for what Littleton needs on a Board of Health level. So we'd love for his feedback. We'd love for his assistance in helping the new health agent get off the ground with the work that needs to be done in Littleton. So
yeah, my feeling is we'd be lucky to get an extension, a 6-month extension of some sort while we ramp up our own department here. Yes, Matt?
Obviously, I'm new to this whole plan and process, but admittedly, when I first learned about it and started reading about it, as I said, 6 months sounds exceedingly optimistic. If we're lucky, we can hire somebody. If we're really lucky, we can hire somebody good. And it's hard to launch if you don't have the right people or person in place. And one of the questions I have is, what do we have in terms of a needs assessment? What have we built so that we can say, yes, we can replace effectively all of NABH services that they're providing to us now, plus fill in the gaps that we don't feel that are necessarily filled in now, because that's really where we want to go, right? We want to improve how we're performing. And how do we know that full package, do we have that documented up and say, yes, one person at this salary is the right solution to meet all of these needs and check all of these boxes? And if this exists, I apologize, I perhaps just haven't read it all yet. But without that, I don't see how we could get it all done in 6 months. I just wouldn't be optimistic that would occur.
Matt, you're the new guy. You're supposed to be full of optimism.
There is this possibility here that if the need basically seems to be that it has to do with what I will call the so-called heavy demand on, I'll call them inspectional services. What I call I hate to limit that word, but it seems to be mainly sanitarian. Is that the view of the board and also of Ed, that the gap at the moment appears to be there? Is that the biggest gap between what we should get and what we think we need? I'm not suggesting that the answer here is the one, but
I don't understand your question.
Okay, here's the question. All right. not all, but the majority of our needs for public health have been provided up to a certain point by the Neshoba or by our joining Neshoba, in which we
Environmental and nursing.
well, it's
Two
yes,
things.
and more recently, directly, more we'll call public health activists. Okay, more directly public health delivery. I'm just distinguishing. All right, and what I'm trying to pose here is that if we hire someone to fill in the gap that we can identify, as Matt has pointed out, then the question is, could that individual work side by side with the Neshoba group so that our gap can be closed until we're in a position where we've completed our assessment of our needs going forward to basically make the decision then, or take the move then of dissociating from the Neshoba group completely. In other words, what I'm asking is the same question that Matt's, but has raised, but I'm trying to focus in and see whether or not our sense has already arrived at the point where we know where the gap is. And what we want to do is fill that gap, as Matt has pointed out, and plus deliver the other services that Neshoba has been done to meet the growing needs of Littleton in all the areas of public health, in all the areas of environmental health.
So to my knowledge, Jim, and you can speak to this, what's the gap in food service inspections?
So, again, we've hired somebody that part-time inspector to make sure that we can ramp up the inspections. And so, you'd like to try to get to all establishments at least twice. That hadn't been done. We're working to close that. I think we've conducted about 50% more inspections this year than last. Part of that is because of the new person. Part of that is some of the restrictions lifted from COVID that we weren't chasing. And part of it was just the general opening of the economy again. So we are working on those things.
It's required, once every 6 months?
So they talk about twice a year. They talk about unless you submit a risk-based inspection plan. So in the food code allows you to submit a risk-based food plan, inspection plan, and submit it for approval to the Department of Public Health. For example, risk-based, you may go to group homes that were serving immunocompromised hospitals, large facilities. You may inspect them more than the place that's just a straight retail store. Right now, we don't have an approved risk-based plan, so twice a year would be kind of the default in the code.
And up until you hiring this new individual, how often would you say that inspections were taking place?
Probably for most retails once, and for the larger establishments twice.
Okay. And so environmental, can you speak to any gaps that are there?
Unfortunately, we're all running in different directions, and depending on the amount of applications that come in and permits and how quick people are turning things around. I mean, I guess I'm working as hard as I can. It's really, I guess, the gaps that you've identified, and to the extent that I can meet them, I'll certainly try.
So it's a time issue and
Sure.
resource.
And I said that, I mean, when Ed originally approached me, he asked if there was more time that we could give from the agency, and it's like, there's kind of finite hours. So I don't see us having any more time. So you've grown, you continue to grow. And so, maybe this move is the right move based on, needing to hire somebody full time so that you have those additional hours that you think you need.
And your hiring of a new health agent, that time additional would not impact your services to Littleton?
Not immediately, probably not, because, as Ed mentioned, we put out job ads for sanitarians and health agents. Wasn't a great selection of people we got. There was some talent in there. And so how long do you look before you just say, hey, look, we're going to grab somebody and train? And that's what we chose to do. So we grabbed somebody and we're training. We hope to have that person up and ready, up and running late spring.
And what did your number start with?
Because you're training somebody a lot lower than that.
Okay.
That's not a bad salary for a health agent.
And I know you just also hired the communication and education specialist. I mean, I know we don't really have that in place, but we don't pay you for that either. So.
Well, I guess what it is we recognize there are some needs beyond just doing straight environmental work for the towns and being able to message. And particularly during COVID, we realized, if you're going in all kinds of different directions all the time, it's hard to stop and message about it because you're just kind of putting out fires constantly. So again, this is something new for us, something we wanted to do the last time they had grants to create districts. But at that point, they were looking to just create districts, not to expand existing. So with this grant funding, we were able to get that position filled. So we're developing it as it's going along, and we hope that it turns into something that's really useful for us.
If I may, I think through the chair, I think the goal for us would be, in hearing the concerns about getting this done in 6 months, I think it would be more important to get it done in an even shorter time frame, so that we would have the services in Neshoba to at least, our agent could see how Jim operates in town when he's in town, and then, pick up the restaurant inspections and the food service inspections, and maybe when Jim is doing a soil evaluation and gets to know a few of the players, he can get the inside, or they, I shouldn't say, they should get the inside scoop on the individuals that Jim deals with on a regular basis. The engineers, the soil scientists, the soil evaluators, the contractors, the installers for Title V septics. But then on the public health side, I know that anybody that's been in Jim's shoes or in the role of the health agent has really switched roles, right? They've gone from being that, Title V sanitarian inspector and food service to somebody who now understands public health from a whole different side. They've gotten their education about COVID and the effects of pandemic, and so they're out there, and that number that we're proposing, I think, will bring that individual forward. If we have to tweak it, and tweaking the numbers is really a conversation, and I think if we want to have any more in-depth conversation, that we should invite Michelle from HR to participate in the conversation, just so you guys can get an understanding of what that number looks like.
Okay. Just one question for Jim. Jim, when if the board had the appetite to ask for a 6-month extension with Neshoba, what is the date of the meeting where that ask needs to take place?
So we have a budget meeting coming up, and at this point, I know the answer to the question, so that's not a hard one. I just wanted to make sure this process has been going along without any kind of formal statement to the agency that we're withdrawing, and so I needed at least something so I can go to my board and says yes, there's a formal statement that this is happening.
What's the answer?
According to Ed, you've withdrawn.
No. What's the answer to the question that the answer to about us asking for a 6-month extension?
No. Your question was, I know the answer for my budget meeting that the last date of service is June 30th.
Right, but you have a board NABOH quarterly meeting that there would have to be a vote taken on our request.
So at this point here, the agency serves members, and so anything beyond that is really up to the board. So we typically have quarterly meetings. So our budget meeting is on the 6th. And then
January?
The next quarterly meeting, which would be probably more appropriate, would be sometime late March.
Okay.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you don't need a clear answer of what we want to do in June on January 2nd or 6th. March is okay.
Well, that's right, because it'll be up to the board to decide because it'll be a short-term extension as opposed to membership question. If I'm hearing the board correctly.
Does anyone from the board have a comment or want to make a motion? Go ahead, Dan.
I just have a quick question for Jim, kind of an operational piece, that if we are looking for a la carte services, basically for nursing services or those pieces, does that option exist, certainly, and kind of tagging it to Ed, is that kind of built in, because we'd basically be paying twice. We'd be contracting out the nursing service piece, the pediatrician piece when needed, those pieces for clinical professionals, as well as obviously paying an in-house inspector, agent. How is that possible? It sounds like you said we use extra services from the associated boards. Is that a la carte a possibility, an option, a structure that works for you? And Ed, is that kind of built into that budget piece of being able to continue that a la carte piece, whatever that contribution would need to be to utilize those services while still also hiring someone new?
So from the agency's perspective, we don't really do an a la carte. It's kind of an all or nothing. It's a membership organization, so it's not, yeah.
So if January, or excuse me, June 30th comes along, you're always a wonderful group of people who are happy to be a resource, but good luck.
Well, that was your choice.
No. I know. No, I'm not saying it that way. I'm not saying, but I mean, that was the question. So you talk like someone had mentioned, I forget who, that, we pay extra for certain services. That is that, one from column 1, one from column 2 kind of thing, an option. Or if it's not, then we really need to have a plan in place for, rather than, we'll hire a per diem, it's like we need to have a real structure in place to be able to acquire a DEA license and those pieces to be able to store immunizations and for across the board, not just obviously COVID. And all those pieces, we need the scope of responsibility, and the needs are going to be a lot more than simply we have a file cabinet and someone who's qualified, but nursing does this and we have somebody else to do those other pieces. We need to be up and running 100% when the switch flips.
I would say, so there are other services that do offer a la carte through health agencies. They will come in and they will pick up wherever we might be falling short should we need those services. Again, I would recommend that, the biggest delay here has been the fact that we should be further down the road. We didn't have an HR director. We didn't have a finance director. So there were things that were going on that took precedent over us implementing this reorg sooner. But we're there now and we're working diligently to get there. So my goal, in understanding what Matt had to say, that, 6 months is hopeful. I'm hopeful that we can see somebody in a lot sooner. And I think, if I take this conversation that we had back to the administration's office and talk about the need to expedite this process, we could make it happen. So my hope would be to make it happen sooner. And if we needed to backfill any shortfalls, or even if we were unable to fill that, worst case scenario, that there are organizations out there that we can bring in to pick that up until we can fill this void.
And who pays for that?
The town pays for it. The town would whatever that salary allocation is.
Well, what if you're paying a salary on top of that because you hired somebody and now, there's more money that has to go out? Is that
No, I was saying if we didn't bring somebody in, we'd go to that service. If we had shortcomings once we had the individual hired, again, we would hope that the revenue that we're generating from fees for health services would cover those costs.
Because that would be my clarification. Do we have a full budget to create all of these services if we're hiring one person and we know we're going to have to get some outside support? Is that the full budget?
So we proposed we're actually going through the budget process now. And it's a new department, right? So we're trying to figure out how and where all the money comes from. Everything that we generate on our side, on the building permit side, goes into the general fund. But when we did the permit fee increase, like I said, we have nearly doubled the revenue that's been coming in. And even though it goes to the general fund, we were trying to show that we could support the new positions that were proposed in the land use and buildings department. So our goal is to not lose that speed that we've generated and to not lose that revenue, but to also generate more revenue with the additional fees that we can collect through permitting through the Board of Health.
Mike?
Yeah, I just want to make the comment that the revenue flow that we've been trying to monitor with the cooperation of Neshoba of how much fees actually are collected through what we'll call the Board of Health as currently constituted, has basically not been very good for the last 2 years, no big surprise. And the increase in revenue that Ed mentioned in connection by raising fees in a particular area, if you look at housing starts as opposed to what do you call development, if you look at housing starts per se in Littleton, we have no idea where they're going to go. And we're highly dependent, not just on the constant cycle of replacement and repair of existing systems, but also install of new ones. So when you look at a project that would be large enough to have an impact on a, quote, Board of Health environmental side of the revenue flow, which is most of where the revenue would flow from, you'd have to depend on a very large project, which, by the way, by volume definition, and Jim could correct me, would not fall into our area at all. It would fall directly to the state itself. In other words, we would not see the fees from, let's say, I'll make a number up, a 45 unit housing development sitting somewhere on King Street, for example. We would not see those revenues.
You're getting at a wastewater treatment plant over 10,000 gallons per day.
Right.
That's what you're talking about.
Yep. So that would not fall in. So in other words,
you could implement a permit fee for that.
No, because I believe the state.
Yeah, you could.
The state. Jim, what is the limit, or what is the time when the state steps in? I'm sorry, I just would like to get it straight.
So, I mean, Mike, you and I spoke about parallel permitting fees. You do some of that now. You have a permit fee for septic permits, and we have one too. You probably best to check with council, but boards are allowed to charge reasonable fees to cover services that they have. So
yeah, no, I'm talking about large project like the one at the Point, for example.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we charge? Is there a fee flowing, to your knowledge, Ed, from the Point for sanitarian services or sanitarian?
There wasn't at the time. There could be moving forward.
I see.
Mr. Sanders has had his hand up for a long time. I'm going to call on him now, if that's all right.
I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. I believe this is very important, and no disrespect to anybody there, but I believe what you have here on hand right now, the town did not explain that at the town meeting about.
Must be Amazon cutting people off again.
He's back.
I'm back.
Yeah, you're back.
That the town did not explain about putting in a full health board department and dropping Neshoba. First and foremost, I want to thank Jim from Neshoba for all that he has done for the town of Littleton. And furthermore, I think if the town had put any depth into thinking on this, you were talking about the least of courtesy would have been to give Neshoba a year and say, we're going to step away and we're going to develop our own department here. Because I'm going to tell you, you may know people here, there, whatever case is, that health board has a lot of pieces to it. And it's going to require somebody being equivalent, as smart as Jim is, to keep you going and running the way you're used to and pulling things up into play. I know that Mr. Mullen is smart, he's good and everything, but I'm saying in simple terms, 6 months is not enough time for you to put what you want to in place and have the people able to pick up and start running without going to this person, that person, hiring people left and right and so forth. That ain't what you want to do. You want to have a department that you put together and you got a director there and you got one or two more people, whatever the case is, they're in environmental sanitation, whatever the case may be. But I'm going to tell you, you're saying 6 months. You know, you get somebody in there, I'm going to tell you, it ain't going to be a smooth transition. You need to have a smooth transition coming from the shovel to you taking on your own. And I don't see it. And the town didn't explain at the town meeting as to what's happened. I'm going to go to the Board of Selectmen and I'm going to talk to Anthony and I'm going to tell him, listen, I think you're putting Littleton in an awkward situation here. You're between the rock and the hard spot. And that is being that you cannot move that transition that quickly because, first of all, you don't have the people in place right now. This is something that should have been thought about. Personnel should have been the first and foremost thing that they should have been thinking of. What do we want to hire? And they should have been looking some time ago. For them to pass this at the town meeting just a month or two ago and to come up and says, okay, now it's coming on board because we didn't have this, didn't have that, but it seemed like nobody took that in consideration. But now they're saying, oh, we can have this done by June 30. Let me tell you, I've done some reorganization with the government and different things and starting up different things. Let me tell you, you got a lot of work in this health board department here. There's a lot of pieces that you have here, even though you have this board set up to take care of a lot of things. But then you're talking about this department, which is the town working on, and you're telling Ms. Fairchild that, okay, she's going to be so busy that she's going to be running around with her head off because she's taking care of the department at the same time and trying to take care of the health board. You know, I'm just telling you, you know, just my thoughts that, you know, you should have gave Neshoba at least a year, and good luck to you all because Mr. Mullen, if you can get this in 6 months, I'm going to come up and tell you that you performed a miracle because that's what it's going to take. Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
If I may, through the chair.
Please.
So, Mr. Sanders, I always appreciate your candor and your input. The vote was taken in June at town meeting, so it will be a little more than a year before the, when the vote was taken to when we move on. The delay, like I said, has been that we did not have an HR department or director, so we couldn't move forward with the job descriptions and the postings. So that's really been the delay. We would have liked to have been much further down the road at this point in time, but we are where we're at, and we are going to try to perform a miracle. If we can't pull that miracle off, there are agencies out there that we can bring in that will help us carry our water until we can bring that right individual in.
Yes, Gino.
Thank you, George. You always mean well. The question is, we have the opportunity to have Jim for 6 months. You never know. He might extend it later when he sees that something doesn't work. Let's get him for 6 months. And maybe Jim, when he sees that whoever comes in is not able to meet his demand, and he will say, I'll extend it for another 6 months. And the town will agree with him. But let's get him now. And
Well,
stop.
we'll have to wait until the March meeting to go in front of the board and request that when we get there. But I think at this juncture in time, we're going to work closely with Mr. Mullen to expedite this process.
But we got to get Jimmy too for 6 months.
And we're going to give Mr. Gariffi the peace of mind of having an answer. Probably we need to formally send you a letter and notify you that we won't be re-signing come June, but we would, potentially come in front of you in March to request a 6-month extension should we need it.
Right.
And if we really screw up, we'll probably try and rejoin in June and get it on the town warrant.
somehow I think you'll figure it out.
Was there anything else that needed to happen in this conversation for you, Jim?
No, like I said, just something formal would be helpful.
Okay, so we'll if as long as the board is okay with that, we can put together a formal letter just for Jim, and we'll run it by everybody for review. Okay. Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Ed, for your time.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome aboard, Matt.
Thanks, Ed.
Do we have any more public comment?
Here we go, public comment already.
Member updates? Oh, George Sanders has his hand raised. Mr. Sanders.
Let me know when you need a vote.
I respect the vigorous fight that you put forth to get Matt on board, because I think you made the exact choice that that board needed. No question in my mind whatsoever. And I just wanted to thank you, gentlemen, for what you did, because you did yourself a great deed. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Any member comments? And I guess all that's left is a motion to adjourn.
I second it. Jim, don't go anywhere, okay, for 6 months.
I'll make a,
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And I'll second it.
Roll call vote. Gino Fratelloni.
Gina Ferrone say yes.
Dan Kane.
Dan Kane says yes.
Matt Wason.
Matt Wason, yes.
Mike Zeldin.
Mike Sullivan, yes.
And Kevin Baker, yes. Have a good holidays. Happy New Year. See you
Happy New Year and keep smiling.
January 12th.